Jacob is one of the key figures in the Hebrew Bible, born into a family chosen for a special purpose. His life is a remarkable journey filled with challenges, growth, and moments where God stepped in. As the son of Isaac and the grandson of Abraham, Jacob was part of a family that had received a divine promise to grow into a great nation. But despite these blessings, Jacob's path was anything but easy. His name, which can be understood as one who grabs the heel or takes another's place, hinted at the struggles he would face. From birth, when he clutched the heel of his twin brother Esau, Jacob's life was shaped by conflict. As they grew up, Jacob and Esau had a strained relationship. One of the most well-known stories tells how Jacob, with help from his mother Rebekah, tricked his father Isaac into giving him the special blessing that was meant for Esau, the older son. This act caused a serious rift between the brothers and forced Jacob to leave home and live far from his family. He went to stay with his uncle Laban, where he faced deception and tough experiences of his own. During this time, Jacob began to change. A powerful moment in his story happened in a place called Bethel, where God spoke to him and repeated the same promise given to his father and grandfather, that Jacob's descendants would be as countless as the dust on the ground. Before continuing with Jacob's journey, I'd like to quickly remind you, if you're enjoying this exploration of biblical stories, consider subscribing to our channel. Your support allows us to keep creating content based on the scriptures, and we'd love for you to be part of this growing community. Hit the subscribe button and turn on the bell so you never miss a new video. As Jacob's story continued, it became clear that he wasn't only defined by his struggles, he was also on a path of deep transformation. After many years working for Laban, Jacob decided to return to his homeland, longing to reconcile with his brother. This step showed how much he had grown as a person. He was no longer someone who only looked out for himself. He was ready to take responsibility and face his past. On the journey back, he had another powerful moment with God, this time in the form of a mysterious figure he wrestled with all night. This was more than a physical fight. It symbolized his lifelong battle to understand who he truly was and where he stood with God. By morning, Jacob received a blessing and a new name, Israel, meaning one who wrestles with God. This change in name marked a turning point in his life, giving him a new role and direction. Jacob was no longer defined by what he had taken from others. He had become someone chosen to lead a people. The 12 sons he would go on to have would not just be names in a list, they would form the foundation of a nation. These 12 sons became the roots of the tribes of Israel. Each one, through their birth order and the woman who bore them, played a part in shaping Jacob's family story. Their names were passed down through generations and became the names of the tribes that would eventually form the nation of Israel. The blessings and predictions given by Jacob and later by Moses highlighted the future paths of these sons and their descendants. To really understand their importance, it helps to see that each son not only helped grow the family, but also represented different traits, strengths, and struggles that became part of Israel's identity. Jacob's sons came from 4 different women, his wives Leah and Rachel, and their servants Bilhah and Zilpah. This created a complicated family environment, full of competition and favoritism, as each son tried to earn respect and attention. Leah, who was not Jacob's favorite, gave birth to 6 sons: Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun. Rachel, the wife Jacob truly loved, had Joseph and Benjamin. Bilhah, Rachel's servant, bore Dan and Naphtali, while Zilpah, Leah's servant, gave birth to Gad and Asher. These 12 would one day lead the tribes that spread out across the land God had promised. But their role went beyond just expanding a family. Each of them reflected different parts of human behavior. Some showed bravery and leadership, while others were involved in deceit and rivalry. Their actions and relationships laid the groundwork for how the tribes would later interact. These early tensions and alliances were a preview of the political and religious struggles the nation would eventually face. Although they were all Jacob's sons, not all were treated the same or received equal blessings. Reuben, the oldest, should have inherited leadership and a double share of the family's wealth. But because of poor decisions, he lost that right. Simeon and Levi, known for their violence, also lost their standing. Judah, though born fourth, rose to a place of leadership. His family line would eventually include King David and later Jesus. Joseph, who was especially loved by Jacob, received a unique blessing that passed to his two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. This created two tribes from Joseph's line instead of one. Benjamin, the youngest, was the last to receive a blessing, and his descendants became known for their strength and skill in battle. Each son added something different to the story God was telling through this family. Their lives, choices, and experiences helped shape the identity of God's people. Some were promised power, others faced warnings of difficulty, but together they formed the foundation of the nation chosen to carry forward the promise first given to Abraham. Through these 12 sons, Jacob's family expanded into a people who would one day be known as a nation set apart among others. Understanding the importance of Jacob's sons helps us see the bigger picture of the Old Testament. The way the tribes were formed and divided would shape Israel's story for generations. Each tribe had its own personality, strengths, and struggles, and together their history became the story of Israel's rise and fall as a kingdom. The words spoken over them by Jacob and later by Moses were not just about their individual futures. They also pointed to the nature and purpose of the tribes that would carry their names. In the Bible, the number 12 is often used to show completeness and divine order. It represents the fulfillment of God's promises. So, the 12 sons were more than just members of a large family. They were part of a bigger plan. This idea shows up again and again in the Bible. The 12 tribes of Israel, the 12 apostles of Jesus, and even the 12 gates in the heavenly city described in Revelation. Every son had a specific role, and every tribe had a divine purpose in God's unfolding story. Now that we've seen who these sons were, let's take a closer look at each one, starting with Reuben, Jacob's first child with Leah. Being the firstborn came with special privileges in those days. It meant receiving a larger share of the inheritance, leading the rest of the family, and continuing the family legacy. Reuben began life with great promise, but his story ended up being one of missed opportunities. A serious mistake caused him to lose his favored position. From the start, it seemed Reuben was meant for great things. As Leah's first son, he brought her hope that she would finally win Jacob's love. His name, which means "look, a son," reflected her desire for recognition and affection from her husband. During his early years, Reuben appeared to take his responsibilities seriously. He showed signs of leadership, like the time when his brothers wanted to kill their younger brother Joseph. Reuben stepped in and convinced them not to harm him. Instead, he suggested they throw Joseph into a pit, hoping to come back later and rescue him. This wasn't a perfect solution, but it did show his attempt to do the right thing. However, despite these moments of good intention, Reuben made a decision that changed everything. In an act of deep disrespect, he had a relationship with Bilhah, his father's concubine, and the mother of two of his brothers, Dan and Naphtali. This wasn't just a personal mistake. It was a betrayal of his father and a challenge to Jacob's position as the head of the family. That one reckless action cost Reuben his birthright and permanently damaged his place in the family. In ancient times, taking a father's concubine was often seen as a bold act. an attempt to take power and challenge authority. But in Reuben's case, it wasn't a show of strength. It was a serious failure in judgment that revealed his lack of control and emotional stability. Although Jacob didn't confront Reuben right away, the betrayal cut deep. It left a wound in their relationship that never healed. What Reuben did wasn't just a personal mistake. It was a blow to the family's honor and the order that held everything together. By choosing to be with Bilhah, Reuben showed not only disrespect for his father, but also a failure to understand the weight of his role as the eldest son. The Bible doesn't tell us much about what Reuben was thinking or feeling after this event, but the silence in his story speaks volumes. He didn't try to explain or defend what he'd done. Unlike Judah or Joseph, who played more active roles in the family story, Reuben quietly faded into the background. His influence slipped away, not with a loud fall, but with a slow decline. Much later, when Jacob was nearing the end of his life, he gathered all his sons to give them his final words. This was when he finally addressed what Reuben had done. In Genesis 49, Jacob's words to his oldest son are both powerful and painful. He said, "You are my firstborn, my strength, the first sign of my power, excelling in honor, excelling in might. But you are as unstable as water. You will not lead, because you went up to your father's bed and defiled it." These words reflect the deep sadness of Reuben's story. He was Jacob's first son, full of potential, strong and full of promise. But his lack of discipline and control made him unfit for leadership. The phrase, "unstable as water," is especially meaningful. Water gives life, but when it's not contained, it becomes unpredictable and destructive. That's how Jacob saw Reuben, someone with energy and passion, but no direction. He could have been a great leader, but he didn't have the consistency or maturity needed for the role. His downfall wasn't just about one mistake. It was a pattern of weakness, of not living up to what was expected of him. Although he stayed in the family and lived among his brothers, he never regained his former place. His father's final words were not a curse, but they made it clear Reuben would no longer hold the rights of the firstborn. Instead, those honors, both leadership and blessing, were given to others. Judah and Joseph stepped into roles that Reuben could no longer fill. For Reuben, life became a series of missed chances and dreams that never came to be. His story is a powerful example of how character and integrity matter more than position or privilege. As the eldest son, Reuben started with everything in his favor: his father's affection, the birthright, and the chance to lead. But all of it slipped away in a moment of poor judgment. His failure wasn't because he lacked ability. It came from a lack of control and wisdom. Reuben's life is a warning that even great potential can be ruined by a single reckless decision. Next comes Simeon, Jacob, and Leah's second son. His name, Simeon, comes from the Hebrew word for herd, showing Leah's belief that God had listened to her longing for love from Jacob. Like Reuben, Simeon's life started with promise, but his story is remembered more for his fiery temper and rash choices. He was ruled by strong feelings, and those emotions led him to make decisions that had lasting effects, not just for himself, but for the future of his family. One of the most shocking events involving Simeon happened early in the lives of Jacob's sons, the violent revenge at Shechem. It all began when Dinah, Jacob's daughter and Simeon's sister, was assaulted by Shechem, a local prince. After the attack, Shechem wanted to marry her and asked his father Hamor to speak with Jacob about arranging a union between the families. But Simeon and his brother Levi, both of whom shared the same mother as Dinah, were outraged by what had happened. They didn't believe a marriage proposal could make up for such a serious offense. They wanted justice. Pretending to agree, Simeon and Levi told Hamor and Shechem that they would accept the marriage only if every man in the city was circumcised. The people of Shechem agreed, hoping to form a bond with Jacob's family. But on the third day, while the men were still in pain from the procedure, Simeon and Levi launched a surprise attack. They moved through the city with swords, killing every male, including Shechem and his father. Then they took over the city, capturing the women and children and seizing everything of value. The scale and brutality of their revenge shocked not just the region, but also their father Jacob. When he found out, he was furious and afraid. He told them, "You've brought disaster on me. Now the people around us will hate us. If they join together against us, we could all be wiped out." But Simeon and Levi didn't back down. Their response was sharp and cold. "Should our sister be treated like a prostitute?" This reply showed how deeply Simeon felt about defending his family's honor, but it also revealed his blind spot. He couldn't see the bigger picture or the danger he had created for everyone around him. In that moment of rage, Simeon's anger overtook his reason. While his desire to stand up for his sister may have come from a place of loyalty, the way he acted turned that into a violent massacre, one that stained his name and shaped the rest of his story. Jacob's concern was justified. Such extreme violence could have easily triggered attacks from surrounding tribes. It was only through divine protection that fear gripped the neighboring peoples, sparing Jacob's family from retaliation. Still, even though Simeon and Levi faced no immediate punishment, their father never forgot what they had done. Reuben's downfall came from a personal failure, but Simeon's fall was tied to his uncontrollable anger and thirst for revenge. His defense of Dinah led to an act so brutal that it dishonored the very family name he thought he was protecting. Jacob didn't immediately take away Simeon's rights or status, but the long-term impact would become clear years later, during the final blessings he gave to his sons. After the events at Shechem, Simeon faded somewhat into the background, but his aggressive and unpredictable nature continued to show itself, especially in how he treated his younger brother Joseph. Like the other brothers, Simeon was bitter toward Joseph. Their father's open favoritism and Joseph's dreams of greatness stirred up jealousy. When the chance came to get rid of Joseph, Simeon was among those pushing hardest for action. While Reuben tried to spare Joseph's life by suggesting they leave him in a pit, Simeon supported the plan to sell him as a slave, and later helped deceive Jacob into thinking Joseph had been killed. This betrayal revealed even more of Simeon's harsh personality. It also added to the growing cracks within the family, divisions that would take years to heal. When a famine forced Jacob's sons to travel to Egypt for food, and they unknowingly came face to face with their long-lost brother Joseph, now a powerful leader, Simeon was the one Joseph chose to imprison as a guarantee the others would return. That choice was no accident. Joseph remembered what Simeon had done. Holding him captive was, in many ways, a symbolic act of justice, payback for his role in Joseph's suffering years before. Throughout his life, Simeon showed himself to be someone who let his emotions lead. He cared deeply about family, but his loyalty often came out through violence. He was quick to act, slow to reflect, and always eager to take control when he felt something was wrong. This passionate nature made him someone you'd want on your side in a fight, but also someone who could be dangerous when unchecked. What truly set Simeon apart wasn't just his anger, but his refusal or inability to grow past it. While some of his brothers changed over time, learning from their mistakes, Simeon remained hardened and inflexible. His story is one of intensity without balance, a life driven by fire but lacking the wisdom to control it. Simeon never changed. He remained impulsive and quick to anger, never seeming to learn from his past mistakes. His deep desire for revenge ended up costing him the trust of his father and left him with a legacy defined by violence. That reputation stuck with him for the rest of his life. Levi, Jacob and Leah's third son, shared much of that same intensity. Like Simeon, he played a central role in one of the darkest episodes in their family's story, the brutal attack on Shechem. Yet, unlike Simeon, Levi's story took a different turn. Though his early years were filled with aggression, that same fiery nature would one day be transformed, setting his descendants apart in a powerful and sacred way. Levi and Simeon were close in both age and temperament. Their loyalty to their family was fierce, but it often showed itself through violent means. The most notorious example of this was their revenge after the assault of their sister Dinah. The two brothers responded with a plan that was both clever and cruel. They pretended to accept a marriage proposal between Dinah and Shechem, the prince who had violated her, on one condition: that every man in Shechem's city undergo circumcision. The people agreed, hoping for peace and alliance. But on the third day, while the men were still recovering, Levi and Simeon launched their attack. They killed every male in the city with brutal precision. This was not just a response, it was a clear and calculated act of vengeance. After the bloodshed, they took everything: women, children, livestock and goods, leaving behind a scene of total devastation. Levi, in particular, seemed consumed by a need to restore honor at any cost. But that need drove him to cross a line. His actions, while rooted in family loyalty, showed a dangerous lack of control. When Jacob heard what had happened, he was appalled. Rather than feeling proud, he was filled with dread. "You've made me a stench to the people around us," he told Simeon and Levi. "If they come together to attack us, we could all be wiped out." Levi didn't show regret. Like Simeon, he stood by what he had done. To him, defending his sister's dignity was worth the risk, even if it meant disobeying his father and putting his entire household in danger. This intense commitment to family honor defined Levi in his youth, but it also darkened his legacy. His father's disappointment was clear, especially in his final words to his sons. When Jacob gave his parting blessings, Levi didn't receive a message of hope or promise. Instead, he was met with strong disapproval and acknowledgement of the harm his uncontrolled passion had caused. Simeon and Levi are brothers. Their swords are tools of violence. I want no part in their plans. I will not join in their gatherings, for in their anger they killed men and crippled oxen without remorse. Their anger is cursed, so fierce and cruel. I will scatter them throughout Jacob and disperse them across Israel. With these stark words, Jacob stripped Levi of any future leadership and foretold that his descendants would be scattered among the people of Israel. Though Levi's anger may have come from a place of loyalty, it was harsh and uncontrolled. His temper was dangerous, not just to himself, but to the entire community. Levi's passion could have been a powerful force for good, but without balance and wisdom, it only brought pain and disorder. Jacob's judgment sounded final, and for a time it seemed that Levi's legacy would be one of ruined promise. Yet Levi's story didn't end in disgrace. Unlike Simeon, who faded into obscurity and conflict, Levi's fiery nature was eventually redirected. His descendants experienced a powerful transformation, one that gave their tribe a meaningful role in Israel's history. This change came much later, during the days of Moses. As the Israelites wandered through the wilderness, a defining moment arrived. When the people worshipped the golden calf at Mount Sinai, betraying God's covenant, it was the tribe of Levi who stepped forward. They rallied to Moses' side, standing firmly against idolatry. They carried out God's command, acting swiftly to restore order and honor his name. This bold act of loyalty was still filled with the same fiery energy Levi once had, but this time it was used in service to God. Their passion now aligned with divine purpose, Because of their unwavering stand for what was right, the Levites were chosen for a special and holy calling. Moses declared their dedication, marking a turning point in Levi's story. From that moment, the Levites were set apart to serve in the tabernacle, taking care of the sacred space where God's presence dwelled. They became Israel's spiritual guides, teachers of the law, keepers of worship, and priests offering sacrifices on behalf of the people. So even though Levi began with a legacy marked by bloodshed, his descendants became known for their devotion and service to God. Jacob's prophecy of their scattering came true, but not as a punishment. Instead, the Levites were spread throughout all the tribes, placed strategically to teach and uphold God's commands wherever they went. Levi's story is a powerful example of how passion, when left unchecked, can lead to harm. But when directed with purpose, it can be redeemed and used for something far greater. But when passion is refined and aligned with God's purpose, it can be transformed into a powerful force for good. Judah, the fourth son of Jacob and Leah, stands out as one of the most important and complex figures in the Bible. His story is one of personal transformation. He began with serious moral failures, but over time became a leader and a symbol of redemption. Unlike his older brothers Reuben, Simeon, and Levi, whose impulsive behavior led to their disgrace, Judah's path was marked by change and growth. His life is a powerful example of how repentance can lead to restoration. At first, Judah wasn't expected to play a leading role. As the fourth son, he had no natural claim to leadership or inheritance. Those honors traditionally belonged to the eldest. He was born into a family full of tension and rivalry. His mother Leah named him Judah, which means praise, in gratitude to God after years of feeling unloved by Jacob. Growing up in such a divided family shaped Judah's early years. Like his brothers, he experienced the pressure of competing for their father's attention. Judah's first major moment in the story comes during one of the darkest episodes in the family's life, when the brothers turned against Joseph. Joseph, the favorite son, had angered them with dreams that suggested he would one day rule over them. Their jealousy turned into hatred, and they began plotting to kill him. But it was Judah who offered a different idea. Rather than murder Joseph, he suggested they sell him to passing traders. "What will we gain if we kill our brother and hide his blood?" he said. "Let's sell him instead. After all, he is our own flesh and blood." This proposal was practical. It avoided bloodshed and brought in money, but it was still a betrayal. Judah's choice may have spared Joseph's life, but it led to years of suffering for both Joseph and their father Jacob. The brothers then created an elaborate lie, soaking Joseph's robe in goat's blood and telling Jacob that a wild animal had killed him. Judah, like the rest, watched silently as their father was crushed by grief. He carried the weight of that deception for years. Soon after, Judah's personal life took a difficult turn. The Bible shifts focus to a story that gives us deeper insight into his character and the beginnings of his transformation. Judah left his family and moved to Canaan, where he married a local woman and had 3 sons, Onan, and Shelah. But trouble followed. His oldest son, did evil in the eyes of the Lord and died, leaving his wife Tamar a widow. Following the custom of levirate marriage, Judah told his second son Onan to marry Tamar and raise children in Er's name. But Onan refused to fulfill this duty, and he too was struck down by God. Tamar was left widowed a second time, still without a child. Afraid of losing his youngest son, Shelah, Judah went back on his word and refused to allow him to marry Tamar. This left Tamar in a deeply vulnerable position, without a husband or children, which in ancient times meant having no security or future. But Tamar wasn't willing to accept that fate. Determined to preserve her place in the family and continue its line, she came up with a bold plan. She disguised herself as a prostitute and waited by the roadside where she knew Judah would pass. Judah didn't recognize her and approached her, offering payment for her services. Unknowingly, he was stepping into a situation that would soon reveal his own failings. Later, when Tamar became pregnant, Judah, still unaware that he was the father, was quick to judge. He called for her to be punished, even put to death for what he believed was immoral behavior. But Tamar calmly revealed the truth. She presented the personal items Judah had given her during their meeting, his seal, cord, and staff. In that moment, Judah was forced to face the truth about himself. He realized the depth of his hypocrisy and declared, "She is more righteous than I, since I didn't give her to my son Shelah." This moment was a turning point in Judah's life. For the first time, he owned up to his mistakes. It was a moment of both failure and growth, one where he admitted his wrongdoing and recognized Tamar's courage and integrity. From that point on, Judah began to change. Years later, his transformation would become even more clear. A severe famine forced Jacob's sons to travel to Egypt to buy grain. Unbeknownst to them, the man in charge of distributing food was Joseph, the very brother they had betrayed and sold into slavery. When they came before him, Joseph didn't reveal who he was. Instead, he tested their hearts. He demanded that they bring back their youngest brother, Benjamin, to prove they were telling the truth. This demand hit Judah hard. Years ago, he had helped send Joseph away. Now he was faced with the possibility of losing another brother, one his father deeply loved. But Judah wasn't the same man he used to be. He stood up and promised his father that he would personally take responsibility for Benjamin's safety. "I'll guarantee his return," he said. "If I fail, you can blame me for the rest of my life." Later, when Joseph orchestrated a final test, framing Benjamin as a thief to see how the brothers would react, it was Judah who stepped up again. In one of the most heartfelt moments in the entire Bible, Judah begged for Benjamin's life. He offered himself as a slave in Benjamin's place, pleading, "Please let me stay instead of the boy. Let him go back with his brothers." Judah's words weren't just about protecting Benjamin. They were filled with concern for his father's heartbreak and deep sorrow for his own past choices. Judah's plea to take Benjamin's place was a selfless act, one that showed just how much he had changed. That moment of sacrifice broke through Joseph's defenses. Seeing Judah's willingness to give up his own freedom to save his brother moved Joseph to tears. He could no longer keep up the charade. He revealed his identity and forgave the brothers who had once betrayed him. This act of courage and compassion from Judah stood in complete contrast to his past. The man who once suggested selling Joseph had now offered himself in Benjamin's place. It was proof of a deep transformation. Judah had become the kind of leader his family needed. His journey is one of the most powerful examples of redemption in the Bible. Judah started out as someone who betrayed his brother and deceived his father, but through pain, loss, and sincere repentance, he was changed into someone willing to bear the cost of others' mistakes. His story shows us that it's never too late to change, and that true leadership is born from humility. It's no surprise then that Judah's descendants were chosen for greatness. He became the forefather of King David, and from his line came the promised Messiah, Jesus Christ. Jacob's final blessing to Judah reflected this destiny. He said, "Judah, your brothers will praise you. Your hand will be on the neck of your enemies. Your father's sons will bow down to you. You are like a young lion returning from the hunt. Who dares disturb him? The scepter will never leave Judah's hand, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until the one comes who it rightfully belongs to, and all nations will obey him." This blessing spoke of Judah's future as the royal tribe. The image of the lion symbolized strength and kingship, and the mention of the scepter foretold the rise of rulers from his line, first David and ultimately Jesus. Judah's tribe would go on to lead the southern kingdom and become the spiritual and political center of Israel. Next in line was Dan, the fifth son of Jacob, and the firstborn of Bilhah, Rachel's maidservant. His name, meaning to judge, reflected Rachel's belief that God had heard her cries and had given her a child through her servant. At the time, Rachel was deeply frustrated by her own inability to bear children, and Dan's birth felt like a personal victory in her rivalry with Leah. Though Dan wasn't born to one of Jacob's wives, his name carried weight. It spoke of justice and hope. Yet Dan's role in the family was somewhat different. Being the son of a concubine meant he didn't have the same standing as Leah or Rachel's children. Still, he was seen as someone who would carry a sense of authority. "He will judge his people," Jacob said. Dan's personal story in the Bible is brief, and most of what we know about him comes through the prophetic words spoken by Jacob and later by Moses. One of the most mysterious aspects of Dan's character appears in the blessing Jacob gives in Genesis 49. He says, "Dan will judge his people as one of the tribes of Israel. Dan will be a snake beside the road, a viper along the path that bites the horse's heels so its rider falls backward." It's a strange and striking image, one filled with both promise and danger. This description paints Dan as clever and potentially dangerous. The comparison to a snake suggests stealth and strategy, but also hints at deception and betrayal. Although Dan was called to a role of leadership, this blessing also pointed to a darker side of his legacy, and that darkness would eventually surface. The tribe of Dan, though originally expected to protect and guide Israel, ended up drifting into idol worship. They were the first to officially bring false gods into the land, pulling people away from their faith in the one true God. Dan's brief story acts as a warning. Power without integrity can lead to ruin. Even those given responsibility and influence can fall when they lose sight of righteousness. The serpent imagery isn't just poetic. It's a prophecy of how Dan's choices would negatively shape his tribe's future. Next comes Naphtali, the sixth son of Jacob and the second born through Bilhah, Rachel's maidservant. That made him Dan's full brother. His name, which means "my struggle," was chosen by Rachel to reflect the deep competition she felt with her sister Leah. Still unable to have children of her own, Rachel saw Naphtali's birth through her servant as a personal triumph. The name Naphtali speaks to Rachel's emotional wrestling, her ongoing efforts to gain standing in the eyes of her husband, and in her rivalry with Leah. Unlike several of his brothers, Naphtali's life isn't marked by conflict or scandal. In fact, the Bible gives us very little drama involving him. Instead of focusing on his actions, Scripture highlights his traits and the character of his descendants. Jacob's blessing to Naphtali is brief but filled with meaning. He says, "Naphtali is a doe set free. He speaks beautiful words." This graceful imagery of a deer running freely suggests speed, agility, and a sense of freedom. The mention of beautiful words hints at eloquence, a talent for speech or storytelling. While many of Jacob's sons were known for their strength, leadership, or conflict, Naphtali stands out for his gentler nature. His blessing emphasizes creativity and expression rather than dominance or power. Naphtali brings balance to the family, a reminder that not all strength comes from the sword. Some influence comes from words, grace, and peace. Naphtali isn't remembered for winning battles or acts of great strength. Instead, his legacy is tied to freedom of movement and the beauty of expression. His tribe became known for their speed and bravery, eventually settling in the lush region near the Sea of Galilee, a place famous for its beauty and fertile land. While some tribes faced inner strife and external threats, The tribe of Naphtali enjoyed a degree of peace and stability. This sense of calm and freedom reflected the very spirit of Jacob's blessing, a graceful and eloquent people thriving quietly in the land they were given. Next came Gad, Jacob's seventh son and the firstborn of Zilpah, Leah's maidservant. His birth brought joy to Leah, who exclaimed, "What good fortune!" The name Gad comes from a Hebrew word meaning fortune or troop, a name that would reflect the future of his descendants. Like Naphtali, Gad doesn't play a dramatic role in the biblical story as an individual, but his legacy is strong. Jacob's blessing over him was short but striking. Gad will be attacked by a band of raiders, but he will strike back and overcome them. This blessing revealed that Gad's tribe would face constant battles. Positioned on the eastern side of the Jordan River, their land made them more vulnerable to invasion. But rather than shrink from danger, the tribe of Gad became known as fierce fighters, always ready to defend their people. The repetition of troop in both name and blessing highlights Gad's identity as a warrior. His descendants earned a reputation for being mighty men of valor, skilled in combat, and always standing their ground in times of conflict. They were often among the first to face danger, protecting the nation from outside threats. Though Gad's personal story isn't detailed in Scripture, his tribe's bravery spoke volumes. He may not have led like Judah or served in the sanctuary like Levi, but Gad's contribution to Israel came through his tribe's strength and endurance. They lived up to the meaning of his name, resilient troops who fought hard and stood firm. Then there was Asher, Jacob's eighth son, also born to Zilpah. His name means happy or blessed, and it was chosen by Leah with joy. How happy I am! Women will call me happy. Unlike many of his brothers, whose names were tied to struggle, rivalry, or longing, Asher's name reflected contentment and celebration. Though Asher doesn't play a major role in the biblical narrative, the blessings spoken over him were remarkable. Jacob's words to Asher were among the most positive given to any of his sons. He said, "Asher's food will be rich. He will provide delicacies fit for a king." This blessing pointed to a life of abundance, prosperity, and access to the finest things. Asher is pictured as someone living in peace and wealth, his descendants enjoying the bounty of fertile land and sharing it with others. Later, Moses echoed this same theme in his blessing over the tribe. "Most blessed of sons is Asher. Let him be favored by his brothers, and let him dip his foot in oil." This image of oil isn't just poetic, it symbolizes the richness of the land Asher's tribe would inherit. They settled in a fertile area along the Mediterranean coast, known for its olive groves, vineyards, and fertile fields. Asher's land became famous for producing some of the best food in the region. While other tribes faced constant battles and unrest, Asher's story is different. His legacy was one of joy, peace, and generosity. His tribe enjoyed the blessings of the land and used their abundance to help others. Asher reminds us that God's favor can be seen not only in victory, but also in contentment and fruitfulness. Next in line is Issachar, Jacob's ninth son and one of Leah's children. His birth came out of an unusual arrangement between Leah and Rachel. At the time, both sisters were still competing for Jacob's love. Leah traded some mandrakes, a plant thought to boost fertility, for a night with Jacob, and as a result, Issachar was born. Leah named him Issachar, meaning reward or wages, seeing his birth as a sign that God had honored her persistence. Issachar's personal story isn't filled with drama, but we get a picture of his character through the blessings of Jacob and Moses. Jacob described him as a strong donkey lying between the saddlebags. He saw that the land was good and chose to settle down, carrying loads and working hard. This image paints Issachar as dependable and resilient. Like a donkey, strong and steady, his tribe would be known for their willingness to work, to shoulder responsibilities, and to serve others. They valued a peaceful life, focusing on farming and stability instead of chasing power or war. Issachar's tribe became known for its practicality. They made wise, steady choices that brought long-term benefit to their people. But Jacob's words also carried a subtle warning. He said Issachar would become a servant at forced labor, a hint that their desire for comfort might lead them to surrender freedom in exchange for peace. Later in history, this proved true. The tribe of Issachar often lived under the influence or control of stronger tribes or foreign powers. They accepted this as a trade-off for the safety and prosperity they valued so highly. Issachar's contentment, while admirable, sometimes left his tribe vulnerable. Their desire for peace could slip into complacency, making them easy targets for more dominant powers. But there was another side to Issachar's legacy, one marked by wisdom and spiritual insight. In Moses' blessing, the descendants of Issachar are portrayed as people of understanding, respected for their knowledge of the times and ability to offer sound guidance. They were thinkers and advisors, often consulted for judgment and direction. Known for raising wise leaders and scholars, they played a significant role in shaping the intellectual and spiritual life of Israel. Issachar's tribe stood out for its balance, strong, humble, hard-working, yet deeply thoughtful. They brought stability to the nation, combining service with insight, physical labor with a deep commitment to truth and righteousness. Next comes Zebulun, Jacob's 10th son and Leah's 6th. Leah named him Zebulun, meaning dwelling or honor, in the hope that Jacob would now recognize and honor her for bearing so many sons. While the Bible doesn't give much detail about Zebulun's personal life, the blessings he received from Jacob and Moses reveal his tribe's future role. Jacob's blessing pointed to a life tied to the sea. Zebulun's descendants would live near the coast and become involved in trade and travel. This set them apart from many of the other tribes, who were primarily farmers or shepherds. Zebulun's location near the sea gave them a strategic advantage. They became merchants, traders, and seafarers, connecting Israel with other nations and bringing in goods that weren't produced locally. Their access to trade routes and coastal cities like Sidon made them an essential part of Israel's economy. Moses echoed this in his blessing, saying, "Rejoice, Zebulun, in your going out, and Issachar in your tents." It was a celebration of their unique strengths, Zebulun's adventurous spirit and Issachar's quiet steadiness. While Issachar focused on working the land and studying the law, Zebulun ventured outward, embracing the world of commerce. Together, the two tribes formed a powerful partnership. One stayed grounded, the other explored. One cultivated the fields, the other brought in goods from distant shores. Zebulun may not have been a warrior or a ruler, but his tribe brought prosperity through trade and served as Israel's gateway to the outside world. Zebulun's descendants became known not just for what they produced, but for the connections they made, building bridges with other cultures and securing resources that benefited all of Israel. Their legacy was one of enterprise, risk-taking, and economic contribution. Joseph, the 11th of Jacob's sons and the first child of Rachel, was born into a family already strained by rivalry and favoritism. His arrival brought immense joy to Jacob, especially since Rachel, Jacob's most cherished wife, had waited years to bear a child. This long-awaited birth made Joseph especially dear to his father's heart. That deep affection was impossible to hide and quickly became a source of tension among the brothers. While the others were sons of Leah, Zilpah, and Bilhah, Joseph held a unique place in the family, not just as Rachel's son, but as the clear favorite. This favoritism was most evident in the gift Joseph received from his father, a richly decorated robe, often remembered as the coat of many colors. More than just a garment, it symbolized special status. To his brothers, it looked like Jacob was preparing Joseph for a leadership role, something they found deeply unfair, especially since he was among the youngest. Joseph's uniqueness didn't end with the robe. As a teenager, he began sharing vivid dreams that hinted at a future where he would rise above the rest of his family. In one dream, bundles of grain, representing his brothers, bowed down to his own bundle. In another, the sun, moon, and 11 stars bowed before him, clearly symbolizing his father, mother, and siblings. Rather than keeping these dreams to himself, Joseph told his family. This only fueled the resentment of his brothers, who saw his words as prideful and insulting. Even Jacob, who loved him deeply, rebuked him, though he couldn't help but wonder if the dreams meant something more. The jealousy among the brothers eventually reached a dangerous level. One day, Jacob sent Joseph to check on them as they grazed the flocks far from home. When the brothers saw Joseph approaching, wearing that unmistakable robe, they saw an opportunity. "Here comes the dreamer," they sneered. "Let's kill him, throw his body into a pit, and say a wild animal got him." But Reuben, the oldest, stepped in. He urged them not to kill Joseph, suggesting instead they leave him in the pit, intending to rescue him later in secret. However, while Reuben was away, Judah offered another idea. Why not sell Joseph to a group of Ishmaelite traders passing by? That way they could get rid of him without killing him and make some money too. The brothers agreed. For 20 pieces of silver they sold Joseph, betraying their own brother. They tore off his special robe and handed him over to the traders, who carried him off to Egypt to be sold as a slave. With Joseph out of the picture, his brothers carried out a cruel deception. They dipped his distinctive robe in goat's blood and brought it back to Jacob. Pretending they had no idea what happened, they said, "We found this. Do you recognize it? Is it your son's robe?" Jacob recognized it immediately. Believing a wild animal had killed his beloved son, he was overwhelmed with grief. He tore his clothes, put on mourning garments, and refused to be comforted. "I will mourn my son until I die," he said, consumed by sorrow. Meanwhile, Joseph's journey took a dramatic turn in Egypt. He was sold to Potiphar, a high-ranking officer in Pharaoh's court. Despite being a slave, Joseph's honesty, intelligence, and work ethic quickly stood out. Potiphar saw his potential and put Joseph in charge of his entire household. Just as Joseph began to settle into this new life, trouble struck again. Potiphar's wife, drawn to Joseph, tried to seduce him, but Joseph refused, staying loyal to both God and his master. Angry at the rejection, she accused him of attacking her. Joseph was imprisoned, punished for a crime he didn't commit. But even behind bars, he didn't lose hope. His strong character earned him the trust of the prison warden, who placed Joseph in charge of the other inmates. It was during this time that Joseph's unique ability to interpret dreams began to shine. Two of Pharaoh's officials, the cupbearer and the baker, were also imprisoned. Each had a strange dream, and Joseph offered to interpret them. He told the cupbearer he would soon be restored to his position. To the baker, however, he predicted execution. Both dreams came true exactly as Joseph had said. Before the cupbearer was released, Joseph asked him to remember him and speak on his behalf to Pharaoh. But once free, the cupbearer forgot all about Joseph, and 2 more years passed in silence. Still, God had not forgotten him. One day, Pharaoh began having disturbing dreams that none of his advisors could explain. That's when the cupbearer finally remembered the young Hebrew man in prison. He told Pharaoh about Joseph's gift. Joseph was summoned, and in one day, everything changed. Pharaoh described his dreams: 7 fat cows devoured by 7 skinny ones, and 7 full ears of grain swallowed by 7 withered ones. With wisdom from God, Joseph interpreted them. There would be 7 years of abundance, followed by 7 years of intense famine. Pharaoh was amazed by Joseph's insight and immediately elevated him to the highest position in the land, second only to Pharaoh himself. Now in charge of all Egypt, Joseph was given the responsibility to manage the country's resources. He oversaw the collection of grain during the years of plenty and ensured there would be enough stored to survive the years of famine. Pharaoh gave Joseph a new name, Zaphenath-Paneah, and arranged his marriage to Asenath, the daughter of a respected Egyptian priest. Though Joseph now held immense power, wealth, and influence, he never lost his humility or faith in God. When the famine struck, it wasn't just Egypt that suffered. The food shortage spread all the way to Canaan, where Joseph's father Jacob and his brothers were struggling to survive. Hearing there was grain in Egypt, Jacob sent his sons to buy food, never imagining they would bow before their own brother, now a powerful Egyptian official. Joseph recognized them the moment they arrived, but they didn't know who he was. Instead of revealing himself right away, Joseph decided to test them. He wanted to know if they had changed since the day they sold him into slavery. He put them through a series of challenges, carefully crafted to mirror their past behavior, especially how they once mistreated him. Joseph watched closely as his brothers responded, looking for signs of repentance. Eventually, it was Judah's selfless offer to take Benjamin's place as a slave that broke through Joseph's emotional wall. Overwhelmed, Joseph could no longer hide the truth. He wept and said, "I am Joseph, your brother, the one you sold into Egypt." His brothers were stunned into silence, expecting punishment. But Joseph, instead of seeking revenge, spoke words of comfort and grace. "Don't be distressed or angry with yourselves. It was God who sent me ahead of you to save lives." Joseph saw the bigger picture. What they had meant for harm, God had used for good, to preserve life during a time of great crisis. Through betrayal, slavery, and prison, Joseph had remained faithful, and now stood as a living example of God's providence. His story is one of the most powerful examples of how God can use suffering for a greater purpose. Joseph's rise from slave to ruler, his unwavering faith through every trial, and his ability to forgive those who hurt him, these make his life one of the most inspiring in the Bible. The blessing Joseph received reflected the depth of his journey. Jacob said, "Joseph is a fruitful vine by a spring, whose branches climb over a wall." These blessings come from the mighty one of Jacob, the shepherd, the rock of Israel. May the blessings of your father surpass the blessings of the ancient hills. This rich and poetic blessing recognized both Joseph's trials and his triumphs. His life bore fruit in every season, and his legacy would be honored for generations. Through his 2 sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, Joseph's line received a double inheritance, becoming 2 of the most powerful tribes in Israel. Benjamin, the 12th and youngest of Jacob's sons, was born in a moment of both great joy and deep sorrow. As Rachel's 2nd son, after Joseph, his birth should have fulfilled her greatest hope. But what began as a long-awaited blessing turned into tragedy. Rachel experienced a difficult and fatal labor. With her final breath, she named her newborn Ben-Oni, meaning "son of my sorrow." But Jacob, heartbroken yet determined to give the child a name of hope, changed it to Benjamin, "son of my right hand." This name reflected both the grief of losing Rachel and Jacob's desire for strength and purpose to rise from that pain. Benjamin would grow up without knowing his mother, in a household shaped by loss, jealousy, and regret. Yet he quickly became a cherished figure, deeply loved by his grieving father and seen as a reminder of the woman Jacob loved most. After losing Joseph, Jacob's pain only deepened, and Benjamin, Rachel's only remaining child, became his most precious son. Jacob was fiercely protective of him, keeping Benjamin close and shielding him from harm. But unlike the jealousy once directed at Joseph, Benjamin did not stir resentment among his brothers. By the time Benjamin was born, the family dynamic had shifted. The older brothers had already witnessed the consequences of their past actions, the pain they had caused their father, and they had grown more united in the face of that shared regret. Benjamin, still a boy when all of this unfolded, had no part in the betrayal of Joseph. Instead, he became a figure of innocence and unity, a chance for the brothers to make better choices and protect rather than hurt their own. In many ways, Benjamin symbolized healing, the possibility of reconciliation in a broken family. Years later, as famine ravaged the land, Benjamin's role in the family took center stage. Jacob, desperate to feed his household, sent his sons to Egypt to buy grain. But the man in charge, the one they would unknowingly bow before, was Joseph, the brother they had betrayed so long ago. Joseph recognized them immediately, but kept his identity hidden. To test them, he accused them of being spies and demanded proof of their story. "Bring your youngest brother," he said. This demand struck fear into the brothers' hearts. They knew their father would never agree to let Benjamin go. Jacob's fear was overwhelming. The thought of losing Benjamin, after already losing Joseph, was more than he could bear. When the brothers returned to Canaan and shared what the Egyptian official had said, Jacob was gripped by despair. Sending Benjamin to Egypt seemed unthinkable. He couldn't bear the risk of losing the last link to Rachel. Jacob, overwhelmed by grief and fear, cried out in despair, "You have taken everything from me. Joseph is gone, Simeon is gone, and now you want to take Benjamin too. Everything is working against me." To Jacob, Benjamin was far more than his youngest child. He was the living memory of Rachel, the last piece of the woman he had loved most. The thought of losing Benjamin was unbearable. At first, Jacob refused to send him, but as the famine grew worse and hunger threatened the entire family, he relented. Moved by Judah's solemn promise to protect Benjamin with his life, when the brothers returned to Egypt, bringing Benjamin with them, everything changed. Joseph, still hiding his identity, was deeply moved at the sight of his only full brother. The last time he had seen Benjamin, he was just a child. Now he stood before him as a young man, innocent and unaware of the pain and betrayal that had torn the family apart. Joseph was filled with emotion and ordered a feast for his brothers. He seated them by age, an act that stunned them, and gave Benjamin 5 times as much food as the others. This wasn't to stir envy, but to see how the brothers would react. Would they repeat the same mistake they had made with Joseph, or had they changed? Then came the final test. Joseph had his silver cup hidden in Benjamin's sack. After the brothers left, he sent his steward after them, accusing them of theft. Confident in their innocence, the brothers declared that if the cup was found, the one who had it would become a slave. But when it was discovered in Benjamin's bag, their world collapsed. Devastated, they tore their clothes and returned to Joseph's palace. There, Judah stepped forward. He had made a vow to protect Benjamin, and he meant it. He offered himself in Benjamin's place. "Please let me stay as your slave. Let the boy go home with his brothers." This powerful plea revealed just how much Judah had changed. He was no longer the brother who once sold Joseph for silver. He was now a man willing to give up everything for his family. Joseph couldn't hold back any longer. Overcome with emotion, he cleared the room and began to sob. "I am Joseph," he revealed. "Is my father still alive?" His brothers were frozen in disbelief, unsure of how to respond. But Joseph reassured them. He embraced Benjamin and wept on his shoulder. After all the pain, betrayal, and years apart, this reunion was a moment of healing. Benjamin, without even knowing it, became the key to restoring a broken family. His presence brought the truth to light, exposed the growth in his brothers, and helped mend what had once seemed beyond repair. Though Benjamin played a quiet role, his impact was profound. His life drew out the best in those around him, especially Judah. While Joseph's story is about overcoming adversity in a foreign land, Benjamin's is about holding the family together through innocence, love, and hope. He was a reminder of what had been lost and what could still be regained through grace, humility, and the power of reconciliation. In the end, Benjamin wasn't just the youngest and most beloved son. He became the spark that helped bring his fractured family back together. His life, protected by the devotion of his brothers and the forgiveness of Joseph, became a powerful sign of new beginnings. While Benjamin's personal story may lack the intense drama of his older siblings, his presence was crucial to the healing and survival of Jacob's household. The blessing spoken over Benjamin was striking. "Benjamin is a ravenous wolf. In the morning he devours his prey. In the evening he shares the spoils." This pointed to a tribe known for fierce and fearless warriors, bold in battle, aggressive when needed, and capable of great victories. But that same intensity would later bring internal strife that nearly tore the tribe apart. Through every blessing and every trial, every act of betrayal and moment of redemption, God was at work, shaping this complex family into the foundation of a nation. Each son, with his strengths and flaws, played a role in the creation of a people chosen to carry God's promise and reflect His light to the world. Their stories remind us of something vital, that no life is beyond repair, no failure beyond redemption. Each journey, no matter how broken, can become part of something meaningful in God's hands. So as we look back on the lives of Jacob's 12 sons, may we also look inward. Let their stories challenge us. Are we using our talents for something greater? Are we letting past mistakes define us? Or are we allowing God to shape us through them? Maybe you see yourself in Reuben's inner conflict, Levi's fiery passion, Judah's growth, or Joseph's unwavering trust in God. Wherever you are in your journey, the message is clear. God can take the scattered pieces of your life and weave them into His greater purpose. If this walk through the lives of Jacob's sons has inspired you, don't let it stop here. Tap the like button, share this video with others seeking deeper understanding, and most importantly, subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us continue creating content rooted in biblical truth and builds a community of people eager to learn and grow. Join us as we explore more of Scripture's wisdom and discover how these ancient lessons still shape our lives today. Hit subscribe and become part of a family of seekers committed to growing in truth, walking in faith, and being transformed, just as the 12 sons became the 12 tribes that would help change the world.